So, ladies and gentlemen, it's day 2 of talking about parallel and perpendicular lines. Okay. What did we learn yesterday? That parallel lines have the same slope. And we also learned that perpendicular lines have opposite reciprocal slope values. Now, what does opposite reciprocal actually mean? That you're going to change the sign and flip the fraction. That's what we learned yesterday. Okay. Now, what about before yesterday? What were we doing before yesterday? Before yesterday, I would tell you write an equation given a certain point and a certain slope. Like, for example, let's say I tell you your line passes through the point. Give me any numbers you want. 2, 2, 5. Okay, so through the point 2, 5, your line passes through the point 2, 5 and has the slope. Give me any slope. 7. Okay, so this is what we were doing before yesterday, where I'm like, write an equation that of a line that passes through a certain point and it has that slope. And we know the 3 forms, and we know that since they give us a point, x1, y1, and a slope, which is 7, we know we could write it in point slope form. We need to remember what point slope form is. It's y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1, where the m's right there, the y1's right there, the x1's right there, and you simply plug them in. It's that easy, right? So we have the 5, that goes right here where the y1's at. So we're going to have y minus that 5 equals the m value we know is 7. So you just plug that in where the m's at, 7. Then you have the parentheses x minus the x1 value, which happens to be 2. And that's what we were doing yesterday, the day before yesterday, right? You have a point, you have a slope, plug it in point slope form. Even if they ask for it in slope intercept, right? Even if they ask for it in standard, if you have a point and a slope, plug it into point slope form, okay? This is why on the wall, I put point slope form first, because whenever you have a point and a slope, you start with point slope form. If they ask you to change the slope intercept, all you have to do is distribute the m and then get rid of this guy. Like if you had a minus 3, all you do is plus 3 after distributing the m. And then you'll have y by itself, and then that slope intercept form. Or if they ask for standard form, you still distribute and you still move that over to get in slope intercept. But then after that, you move that mx term back to the left side so it could become standard. So it depends what form they're asking you for. It'd be good to practice all 3 forms. So like on this particular example, you guys gave me a point, you guys gave me a slope, we wrote it in point slope form. If I ask for it in slope intercept, all you have to do is distribute the 7. Okay, so 7x minus 14, you have the equal sign, you have y minus 5, and then all you do is get rid of the minus 5 by doing plus 5 and plus 5. I ran out of space, so your slope intercept form equation would be y equals 7x minus 9. And that's now in slope intercept form if they ask for it in slope intercept form. And if they ask for it in standard, what do? You just move the 7x to the other side by subtracting 7x and subtracting 7x, and you'll have your standard form equation, negative 7x plus y equals negative 9. And that's an answer for standard form, but if it's multiple choice, it's very likely that we're going to write the first term as positive, which means you have to multiply everything by negative 1. And you'd have a positive 7x, a negative y, and a positive 9. That's standard form right there. So whenever I give you a point and a slope, start with point slope form, which is right here. And then you could change that to slope intercept, and you could change that to standard. That's what we've been doing all week, even last week, right? So yesterday we learned about parallel lines and perpendicular lines. And with these 2 words, parallel or perpendicular, we're going to be indirectly given the slope. Check this out. We have some instructions up here. It says, write an equation in slope intercept form of the line that passes through the given point. So I am giving you a point, and your line is parallel to the graph of the given equation. So what am I giving you? I am giving you a point, which is x1, y1, which is right here, x1, y1, and I'm indirectly giving you a slope, because we should all know that parallel means what? The same slope. Parallel means same slope. Perpendicular means opposite reciprocal slopes. So I'm given a point, and they give me an equation, but this equation's in standard form. And standard form, we cannot see the m value. So what you need to do is figure out what your m is going to be based on the fact that they're telling us it's going to be parallel to this given equation right here. So first, get it in slope-intercept form so you could see the m. You see, the only way you could see m is if it's in point-slope form or slope-intercept. You see, when it's in point-slope form, you could see the m. When it's in slope-intercept form, you could see the m. And the equation that I gave you is in standard form, and you cannot see the m right there, okay? So what we want to do is change your standard form and get y by itself. That way you could actually identify what the m actually is, okay? So let's take this equation right here. Let's get y by itself. We're going to get rid of the 2x by subtracting 2x and subtracting 2x. So our equation is going to be y equals negative 2x plus 5. And that is in slope-intercept form. And now we could actually see the slope. What is the slope?
5.
The slope is negative 2, right? Now, on the instructions, it says that our line passes through this point and is parallel to this line. So parallel means same slope. So we now know our slope. Our slope is also negative 2 because of the word parallel. So what do we have here? We have a point and a slope. Just like before, whenever you have a point and a slope, what do you write it in? Point-slope form. Okay, all you got to do is plug in the point and plug in the slope. So let's rewrite point-slope form with blank spots. Y minus blank spot equals blank spot parenthesis x minus blank spot. And of course, you're going to plug in the y1 right here, the m right there, and the x1 right there. So y1 is 1. You know what? Just for the sake of being thorough, I'm going to write it out. y1, x1, and m. And then I'm going to rewrite it again and plug in the y1 value of 1, plug in the m value of negative 2, plug in the x1 value of 3. So again, the slope was indirectly given to us because of the word parallel. It says that it's parallel to this equation. So this equation, all this work that I did right here on this equation, it was all just to be able to find m, and because it's parallel, we have the same slope. So our m is that same exact slope, negative 2. And with that point and with that slope, we could plug it into point-slope form. If the instruction said write the equation in point-slope form, this would be it. I'd be done. But it doesn't say point-slope form. It says slope-intercept. And we know that slope-intercept form is the second one down, which means that from point-slope form to get it in slope-intercept, all I have to do is distribute and then move. Distribute and move. So I am going to distribute the negative 2. Negative 2 times x, negative 2x, negative 2 times negative 3, positive 6. Bring down the equal sign, bring down the y minus 1. We've already distributed. Now we're going to move that minus 1 by doing the opposite. Plus 1, plus 1. Here's our slope-intercept form equation. Y equals negative 2x plus 7. That's slope-intercept form. That's what they're asking for. We're done. If they would have said write it in standard form, all you got to do is take this minus 2x and add 2x, and it would be in standard form. Okay? So we're doing the same thing as always. The same thing that we've been doing for weeks now, where I give you a point, I give you a slope, plug it into point-slope form. The only addition is that we're talking about parallel lines, and parallel tells you that it's the same exact slope as the equation that I give you. Perpendicular would be opposite reciprocal slopes. Okay, so right here we have a line that passes through this point, and it's going to be parallel to this line, and I need the slope of this line. So what do I do to get this in, to find the slope? What do I do? Subtract 5x, right? So we're going to get rid of the 5x. We want to get y by itself. So far, we almost have y by itself. All I need to do to get y by itself is what? Divide everything by negative 4. Cancels out. Our new slope-intercept form equation of this equation that they gave us is y equals a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So you're going to have positive 5 over 4. You can't really divide 5 by 4, so you leave it like a fraction. You do have an x right next to that fraction. And then 1 divided by negative 4, that's going to be a negative, and 1 divided by 4, you can't really do it, so you just leave it. And that's really ugly if they asked you to graph it, but they're not asking us to graph it. The only reason they gave us that equation is to tell us that our equation is going to be parallel to this equation. What does that mean, parallel? Equal what? The same what? same slope. So this guy is our slope. Our slope, actually I should do that in blue. Our slope is 5 over 4. That's our slope. But what about our point? They give us a point, x1, y1. So all of this work right here, all of that work that I did on that equation was just to see my slope, because I know it's parallel, which means that my slope has to be identical to that slope. I don't have to look at this ever again. I could put a line through it if I want. But now I know my point, I know my slope. Let's go for point slope form. And point slope form is y minus y1 equals m parentheses x minus x1. I would rewrite it with blank spots before plugging anything in. Then you could plug in your y1 value of 2 right there. So that's a 2. You could plug in your m value of 5/4 right there. Put a 5/4 right there. And you could put your x1 value of -8 right there in the x1, which would be a -8 right there. And of course, a minus minus changes to plus plus. If the instructions say write it in point slope form, that would be your answer. But it doesn't. The instruction said write it in slope intercept form. Slope intercepts y equals mx plus b, no parentheses. So what do? You got to get rid of those parentheses. What do? Distribute. So you're going to go 5/4 times x. That's 5/4 x. 5/4 times 8. You could actually get a calculator, hit the fraction button, type in 5/4, and then multiply it by 8, and it'll give you 10. Or you could do it by hand and say, okay, put the 8 over a 1, and you could do the top with the top. 5 times 8 is 40, and then 4 times 1 is 4, so you end up with 40 over 4, and 40 over 4 is 10. You can use a calculator if you want. Anyways, we have y minus 2 equals that stuff. It almost has y by itself. All we need to do is add 2. Your final slope-intercept form equation that they're asking for is y equals 5/4 x plus 12. And that's the b value. I'll do it in red. Now, if they would have asked for standard form, you don't want fractions, so you'd have to multiply by 4 to cancel it out, multiply by 4, and then you move your x term over, and that would be in standard form. Okay? But they're not asking for standard form, they're asking for slope-intercept, and that's it. Now, we're going to have a worksheet, and half of the worksheet is kind of like this, where I tell you, write your slope-intercept form equation of the line that has this given point and is parallel to this equation, so you got to find the slope of that equation, and parallel means that yours is exactly the same. Now, the second half of the worksheet is going to have these instructions. Write an equation in slope-intercept form of the line that passes through the given point. Same deal, they give you a point, but it's not parallel anymore, it's perpendicular. Now, what is perpendicular? It's an opposite reciprocal slope. That means that whatever slope that given equation has, you're going to change the sign and flip the fraction to acquire your slope, okay? So on the first one, let's zoom in on that first one. Let's find the slope of that equation on the right side. It's in standard form. I need to get it in slope-intercept form to see the slope. So what should I do? Subtract 3x, thank you. Subtract 3x, cancel it out, rewrite it. We have 12y equals, put the x term first, the minus 6 second. Now you got to get rid of that 12. How do I get rid of that 12? Yep. To get rid of multiplication of 12 in front of the y, you divide by 12, and you divide by 12, and you divide by 12. If you freak out, use a calculator. This gives you y equals, and with the calculator, if you did -3 over 12 and hit equal, it will reduce it for you to -1/4. Or you could simply reduce by 3, and it'll still be -1/4 with an x. And 6 over 12, you could reduce that on the calculator, or you could reduce by 6, and that'll be a -1/2. But then again, who cares about the b value? They're not asking us to graph it. They're just telling us that our slope will be perpendicular to this slope. So if our slope is perpendicular to -1/4, what is our slope gonna be? Positive 4 over 1, which is just 4. Beautiful, right? Okay. And of course, we have a x1, y1 value. Our line's going to pass through this point, and it has this slope. How did we get this slope? Because it's perpendicular to this one. We couldn't see it till we actually got it in slope-intercept form, so we could see the m. But now that we have a slope and now that we have a point, we could jump to point-slope form. And of course, when you use point slope form, I would rewrite it with blank spots. Then you plug in your y1 right in there, which is a -7. Plug in your x1 right in there, which is a -1. And plug in your m value of 4 right in there. And that's your point slope form equation. Change minus minus to plus plus. And if they asked for point slope form, that would be your answer. But they're asking for slope intercept. Slope intercept is y equals mx plus b. Slope intercept doesn't have parentheses. So we're going to get rid of those parentheses. How? Distributing. 4 times x, 4x, 4 times +1, +4. Bring down the equal sign, bring down the +7, bring down the y. We almost have y by itself. We're going to subtract 7, and you're going to have y by itself. Y equals mx plus b. 4x plus -3. I'm just going to write it as a -3. And there's your slope-intercept form equation. How does that taste? Good? Shall we try another? Yes, please. Okay, let's do another. So again, they're telling us that our line is perpendicular to this line. Now, I need to find my slope of this line. That way I could change the sign and flip it because that would be the perpendicular slope. So ours has the m value of, I don't know, we're going to find it out. But we do know that this is the point of our line. So let's go to this equation over here, and let's get y by itself so we could see the m. We're going to subtract 2x. We're going to rewrite it, -5y equals the -2x minus 10. Final step is to do what? Divide by -5, divide by -5, divide by -5. Cancels out. We have y equals, a negative divided by a negative is a positive, but it's still 2 over 5. You can't really divide 2 by 5, but you do have an x right next to it. And a -10 divided by a -5, that is a +2. But we don't even really care about the b value of this equation. All we care about is the m value, because they tell us that our line is perpendicular to this line. So what is the perpendicular slope of 2/5? -5/2. Opposite reciprocal. Change the sign, make it negative, flip the fraction, becomes 5/2. So the opposite reciprocal slope of 2/5 is -5/2. So that's our slope of our perpendicular line to this one, okay? So the whole purpose of doing this algebra was just to be able to find the slope 2/5, to be able to change the sign and flip the fraction. That way we end up with a -5/2. Okay, now that we have a point and a slope, now we could go for point slope form. And of course, whenever you use point slope form, rewrite it with blank spots and plug in your y1 value of -5, that goes right there. Your m value of -5/2, that goes right there, -5/2. Your x1 value of 4, that goes right there, 4. And change any minus minus to plus plus. So there's your point slope form equation. But they're not asking for point slope form equation. They want slope intercept form. So they want you to get rid of the parentheses. How do you get rid of parentheses? By distributing. So you're going to distribute -5/2 times x, that's -5/2 x. And then -5/2 times -4, a negative times a negative is a positive. And you could put the 4 over 1 and then multiply the top with the top. So that'd be a 20 up on top. And on the bottom, 2 times 1 is 2. And 20 divided by 2 is 10. So what I really have is y plus 5 equals, right? Y plus 5 equals, there it is, y plus 5 equals -5/2 x. And then plus 10. So the final step to get this in slope-intercept form would be to subtract 5, and you'll end up with y equals -5/2 x minus 2. And that is your answer for this particular question that they want it in slope-intercept form. If they would have said point slope form, then this would be your answer right here. But they said slope-intercept form, and this is your answer right here for slope-intercept. If they would have said standard, you'd have to get rid of the fraction first, multiply by 2, multiply by 2, multiply by 2, and then move that over to the other side. Okay? So I hope this helps. If we look at the actual worksheet, this worksheet is set up exactly the way the lesson was set up, where the first half of it it had the instructions, write an equation in slope-intercept form of the line that passes through the given point and is parallel. So they do give you a point, and they do give you a slope indirectly because it's parallel to the given equation. So sometimes you're going to be able to just see the slope because it's going to be in slope-intercept form, and it's going to be the same slope. Sometimes you have to do some math to get it in slope-intercept form so you could see the slope. Would you like to see any of those done right now, 1 through 9? Anybody? 9. Let's go to 9. They give us a point, x1, y1, and they tell us that our line is parallel to this line. Now, what is the slope of this line? 1/2. So if our line is parallel to this line, that means that our slope is also 1/2, right? So we have a slope, we have a point, we might as well write it in point-slope form. It doesn't matter if they ask for point-slope form or not. If you have a point and a slope, write it in point-slope form, and then you could change it to any other form that they ask you. So when you use point-slope form, rewrite it with blank spots. Plug in your y1 value, which is 3, goes right there. Your x1 value of -4 goes over here. The m value of 1/2, we know it's 1/2, plug it in right there. Change the minus to plus, and that's your point-slope form equation. But they want it in slope-intercept, so we're going to distribute. We're going to take this 1/2, multiply it by x, that's 1/2 x. Take the 1/2, multiply it by 4. You could use a calculator, or what is half of 4? Half of 4 is 2. Bring down the equal sign, bring down the y minus 3. You almost have y by itself. All you got to do is add 3 here, add 3 there. You're going to have y equals, the slope is 1/2, right in front of the x, and then plus 5 is your b value. There's your slope-intercept form equation. You see, it's easy. Now, if you go to the second half, this is the same as the second half of the lesson, where I tell you that they give us a point, and they tell us that our line is perpendicular to the given line. Okay, so like number 18, they give you this equation, and our line is going to be perpendicular to it. So what's our slope? -2. That would be -2, or -2/1. What would the perpendicular slope of this guy be? -4. What would the perpendicular slope of this guy be? -1/2. You guys get it, right? Okay. So yeah, you have the slope, you have a point, you're going to plug it into point-slope form. And the ones up here are honestly ridiculous. Let me tell you why. Like, for example, this guy. You see, they tell you that your line passes through this point, the x1, y1. And they tell you that it's parallel to this given line. Okay? And if it's parallel, then that must mean what? That it has the same slope. So our m is 2, and our point is -2, -3. So you could, the worksheet wants you to practice point-slope form, but that's ridiculous. You know why? Because if it's a visual graph, and you know the slope, what's the slope? It's rise 2, run 1, right? Has to look exactly like this, of rise 2, run 1. So from here, if you rise 2 and run 1, you could put your dot right there, and you could rise 2, run 1 again, and put your dot right there, and you could rise 2, run 1 again, and put your dot right there, and you could draw your line. So if you visually see your line, you don't have to do any math, because for a line in slope-intercept form, all you need is the m and the b. You already know the m, and where does it cross the y-axis? The b value's right there. What's that value? +1. So the b value is +1. So what's your equation? Y equals 2x plus 1. You didn't have to do any math. Okay, I think that's enough. I apologize for the long lesson. If you understand it, that's great, but you got to practice, guys. So please work on this worksheet. Double check your answers on Google Classroom.